Hi guys, this is Elizabeth from Alexandria's Private Tuition, and if you're over here from TikTok, I promised that I would go through a more in-depth insight into an inspector course. I know the exams are around the corner, literally next week, so hopefully you find this helpful and beneficial in some way. So obviously on the TikTok video that I did going through gender, we looked at how Priestley uses gender to communicate certain things about the place. So we looked at the fact that Mrs. Berlin represents this idea of internalized sexism, how Mr. Berlin represents this idea of kind of like the patriarchal society. But it would be remiss of me to not talk about this idea of responsibility. Now, if I look down, it's because I'm looking at my notes. I'm still paying attention. So, Priestley uses responsibility as a social weapon. So it's this idea that it's not a personality trait. He's basically saying that as a society, we have kind of weaponized this idea of not taking responsibility. And by not taking responsibility for our actions, we have inadvertently created a society that's quite selfish, doesn't care about the poor, doesn't care about the working class, doesn't care about the rights of women. And in a way, Priestley is commenting on this idea of this need for social justice in terms of responsibility. So this idea that our daily choices impact those around us. So, when he says like we are bees in a hive, or when he says like we are all John Smiths and Eva Smiths, it's this idea that we all have daily struggles and need the support of those around us. And what might seem as simple to you can be death to someone else. So for Mr. Berlin, it was this idea that he fired Eva, didn't really care about her, but that was like a death sentence to Eva because her life literally went downhill after that. And you see, if you're able to see those kind of like conceptual ideas, that's how you unlock those grades for the higher band 6, like the higher levels. Another thing that we could talk about is class as a tool for dehumanization. So when I talk about dehumanization, I'm literally talking about making humans feel less than, like objects, like animals, and literally class is used in that way to do so. So because Eva Smith, Daisy Renton, is presented as lower class, she is seen as less human. So when she is dismissed by, again, Mr. Berlin himself, he doesn't see her as a person. He sees her as something that he can just throw away. The same with Sheila. Sheila uses her class, even though she changes and she transforms into a socially aware person at the start of the play. Sheila uses her class to dehumanize Eva. She's jealous and she knows that she has the power and authority, so she wields it in such a way to make herself feel better, but inadvertently, again, it impacts Eva. I've also got this idea that Eva becomes a blank canvas, so she can be a representation of anyone. And again, like I said previously, it reiterates this idea that Priestley says Eva Smiths, John Smiths, like we are all an example of those individuals that could be treated really badly. So again, when you're commenting on like the writer's intentions, you could say something along the lines of Priestley using the characters as a warning against mistreating those from different social classes, like the consequences that come from mistreating humanity and viewing them as less than. So that's a really good point. Another thing that really kind of like stands out is this idea that generation divide in the play. So obviously we've got Miss Berlin, Mrs. Berlin, and in some cases we've got Gerald, who represent that kind of like old traditional mindset of money important, people not so important, this idea of social class and being a socialist being as something that they don't agree with. Whereas you've got individuals like the inspector and you've got Sheila, who represents this idea of socialism, who turns from that kind of who turns away from the capitalist mindset and then, in a sense, embraces the idea of community and responsibility. And again, that's a really important thing, because Priestley is showing us that people can change. People have the ability to change. And the time that he wrote the play, as you know, it was a time where he was afraid that England was going to go back to its old ways, prioritizing money, prioritizing wealth over this new sense of community. And Priestley wrote the play as an allegory, hoping that people wouldn't go back to those old ways. So it's really important that when you are talking about this, when you are writing about these themes, that you think about the deeper meaning. Is Priestley trying to teach? Is he trying to warn? Is he trying to criticize? Is he trying to highlight? What is it that he wants us to take away from it? Stop looking at characters as characters and see them as symbols. That's the most important thing. And that is how you're going to get into that kind of like conceptual band, okay? Being quite perceptive. I hope that was helpful, and best of luck in your exam. And if you've got any questions, again, just drop it in the comment section below and I'm happy to help. Bye.